Greetings from San Francisco. My name's Denise Sullivan, and we're live at Bird and Beckett Books. This is the San Francisco Live's live talk series. We convene once a month with an artist, an activist, or someone in the community who's doing great work. And today, we'd like to welcome our guest, Malia Spanyol.
Hi.
Hi. Malia is a small business owner, and she's going to tell us a lot about her journey. But first, I want to say Happy Mother's Day.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And it's appropriate that you should join us because your latest venture is, of course, Mother.
Yeah.
A drinking establishment.
Yes, a bar.
A bar.
Neighborhood bar.
And an otherwise historic queer space.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely.
So why don't we start, since it is Mother's Day and it is your new project. Tell us a little bit about the inspiration behind getting that space re-established.
I mean, where do you want me to start? It was an adventure, and I don't even know. I mean, this wasn't even something in my crosshairs a year and a half ago.
Well, let's start with this weekend because
Great.
my cohort in this project, Jenna, is a patron of your place, and that's how we came to learn of it. And some folks know that the 16th Street and Valencia, probably to 24th, was historically kind of a women-owned and queer-friendly neighborhood for many years before the big gentrification of the area,
Yes.
right? I'm like shortening it, cutting to the chase so we can get to the work that you're doing. But through this process of hyper-gentrification and change and development in the city, we lost a lot of the women-owned businesses and specifically the women's bars.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes. Spaces, communities. Yes.
Right. So in that breach, it was time to reestablish. Was that part of the impetus?
Yes. I mean, it feels very it's a very selfish project. Like, I personally needed community and I needed space. And I mean, I've lived in the Mission for 25, 30 years, and I have my haunts and my places, my spots. But a lot of times they aren't. I have to be hyper vigilant just by walking down the street in my own neighborhood. Just by, going into these spaces that I've been going into for 25 years, I still have to be hyper vigilant. And it's a little exhausting, and it's becoming more and more prevalent for me to have to do that. And I really wanted a space that I didn't have to worry about that so much.
Right. So you mean like you would walk into a bar and you'd be like, whoa, what happened here? Where, who, what?
I get looks. My girlfriend gets looks. I have to worry about what bathroom I'm using. I have to, I have to deal with sometimes hostile encounters on the street or just weird, I mean, it's, the little tiny microaggressions that I'm naturally just always hypervigilant in any space I walk into. But sometimes it's just a little much, and it's exhausting.
Wow. Well, this is like, an essential part of the discussion, and I'm glad that we're having it, and we're not simply talking about, owning a small business in San Francisco, which is another discussion, which you are very qualified to address, and we'll get to that in a moment. But I guess historically, when you feel that way on the streets of our city, well, first of all, it makes my heart heavy. It makes me sad, because how does it compare to when you first were walking those streets?
I think that it's always been like that.
Okay.
That's just the way it is. But we had spaces so that we could, take a break. We could find our community. We could relax for a little bit. We would have the pockets.
Yeah.
And I didn't have so many of those pockets anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
So in essence, Mother, and do you just call it Mother, or is it Mother Bar?
It's Mother.
So Mother is like a beacon, say, in the neighborhood where folks know, "Ah, I can come in here and I can rest."
Yes. That they can find community.
Right,
Yeah. Find space.
right.
Yeah.
And oh, I said, yeah, because Jenna had turned me on to your business, and then she said last night that there was an event
Yes.
that was kind of. Why don't you explain?
Well, we had a prom. It was a cute little prom. And the response to it was insanely positive. And it was, I did not expect that. It was great. It was, people came out of the woodworks in their like dress to the nines, just having a great time. And it felt really good. It was great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was folks like just for fun, but I also suppose that there is a kind of a tradition for queer people who missed their prom or weren't able to participate
Yes.
in.
I mean, we talk about how prom is such an iconic, like, high school, like, it's like a process. It's like just one of the things that you do growing up. And so many of us feel awkward about it or miss out on it or avoid it, and so it was sort of an opportunity to sort of re-embrace that. And it also, I wanted, to give the staff an opportunity to dress up because they're so cute. And then you get to put on a cute little outfit and I don't know, and to help, have events for the community to look forward to. And also to see if we could pull it off and potentially what Pride would look like.
Right. It was like a test run.
It was our first big event. Yeah.
Yeah. When we were working out when to book you here, and it was like these dates were kind of closing in. It's like, well, Mother's Day, not everyone wants to do Mother's Day, and there was Easter, and then Pride, and it's like, oh no, she's going to be too busy that month, right?
Yeah.
You have a lot of things kind of.
I think I will be busy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, bar Pride
Yes.
is kind of a tradition.
Yeah.
Right. Do you know much about the history of the space when it was Esta Noche? And could you speak to that at all?
I knew of and loved Esta Noche. The only times I've ever been in Esta Noche were either very early in the afternoon or very late at night, and probably should have just gone home. It was that kind of a bar. You walk in and it was dark, and it was, it was rough around the edges, and it was beautiful. And it was such a pillar. And it offered so much to the community for so many years. And it was a shame that we lost it. We lost a lot of spaces.
Yeah, talk about some of those other bars and spaces that you remember from the neighborhood or outside the neighborhood.
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of the reason why I ended up with Mother, a lot of it had to do with this research project that my girlfriend and I were doing, where we started researching all the women's bars that have existed in San Francisco, and there were so many, and they're all gone. Yeah. And the last bar we had, the Lexington Club, closed almost 9 years ago, and but we had. I've been reminiscing with a friend of mine who is a photographer who took so many pictures in the 90s, Chloe Sherman. And we were trying to remember just all the clubs that were happening, all the spaces we had. And it was like, we had Tranny Shack, which was mixed, but then we had Junk and Faster Pussycat and, Fairy Butch had an event, and Club Q and Code Blue and what was the Firehouse, Paula's Clubhouse, and I mean, we had the Bearded Lady, which was just a little coffee place, and a Sento Bathhouse, and yeah,
that's more than two hands, I think. Yeah, wow. And then even prior to that, I mean, I have friends who were around like in the era where, well, the 70s, right? So they lost their hangouts too. There was a whole turnover there.
A little more, Peg's Place, Amelia's Mods.
There you go.
Those are the one generation before me.
There you go. So yeah, what a shame, and just like it really doesn't make much sense that that there would be no women's spaces in a city like San Francisco that sort of pioneered this tradition,
Yeah.
so to speak, right?
I mean, we do have Jolene's. Amen. Got a lot of us with the pandemic. But Jolene's is like, is a club for sure. And we don't have a place we can just know we can go to 7 days a week. It's open. It's accessible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, well, let's talk about a couple of your other businesses and the ethos that inspires La Lucha Cafe for coffee, right? The Muay Thai gym.
Yes, Wooden Man.
Woodman. And the Parkside.
The Parkside.
Wow. Well, let's start because that's a bar, so we'll stay in the bar zone for a minute.
Sure.
But and you did talk about spaces that are mixed, so these are not specifically queer or women only spaces, right? The Parkside is a general bar, club, etc.
Yes.
How did you come to get involved with the Parkside?
I had Pops on 24th Street, and it was just
Pops.
It was just a little neighborhood bar, and I got an opportunity to take over Parkside, and the possibility of the Parkside really attracted me, and so I went ahead and took over the Parkside in 2007.
Okay. Now, on and off the live music schedule has been more consistent and happening, and then the pandemic, and now how is it coming back from the live music kind of
Well, I
closure?
mean, live music has had to pivot so many times. Even before the pandemic, there was the mass exodus of, I mean, we sort of cater to, punk, rock, metal, garage, and the mass exodus out of the city, we lost a lot of regular clientele. And now, we have, so many people living in Oakland, Vallejo, even further than that, or they're just gone. And so we had to, pivot from that. And then we had the pandemic, and now we're just finally starting to get back. Bands are starting to tour. Everyone's, we're almost back to a sort of a regular schedule. But it's been interesting.
Yeah. What would you say the go-to, the clientele can be? How can the clientele be characterized mostly?
The one thing I love about Parkside is that it's completely different on any given day. We have softball and neighborhood and dogs. We have, a lot of the tech coming in after happy hour. We have live music. We'll have country. We have, last night was just metal, all metal. And so it really depends.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a very eclectic, sort of
You have
clientele.
people from the college.
The CCA.
Yeah,
We have art
CCA,
students.
so you have art and gallery people.
We
It's
have
like
doctors
nice,
and nurses from Mission Bay.
right.
We have it all.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So it's kind of the go-to neighborhood watering hole.
It's a secret little place.
Right.
We have the patio. On the weekends, we have parking. So
Yeah, that's interesting how it's sort of desolate
So
still
far.
on weekends. Yeah. Wow, interesting. Now, you did mention the drift of musicians from the city and other artists, and this is something that we talk about a lot here and that I cover a lot in my journalism, concerning, like, on a super deep level, to the degree that next month our entire discussion will be devoted to that. That said, how is it for you as someone who employs that kind of same base of folks who are just trying to hang on
right.
and live in the city?
It's rough. It's hard. First off, it's hard to find.
Yeah.
Staff. We have people who have to commute, and it's rough. But I'm really lucky in the crew that I do have, and oh boy, it's a thing. It was a lot of pressure during COVID, especially to take care and to help find a way to help all of the staff, all of us survive and
Yeah.
get through it, without sinking.
Yeah. Did you have period of closure and then a kind of a soft reopening?
Did.
Or?
We were lucky enough that we were a restaurant, so we were able to open. We have that giant park across the street, so people would hang out in the park. We did a thing where our staff would design a shirt, and then we had a staff member who printed shirts, and then we would, another staff member built the website, and then we would all come in and package and ship, and that sort of kept us going, gave us something to do. But
Oh, support the Parkside
all
with
of it.
Your
All,
donation.
yeah, we all, it was
gotcha.
all staff participating sort of
Wow.
venture, and then all the profits split amongst everyone who was helping out, and then we got to sort of open up a little bit, and that kept us all sort of alive.
Right. Wow. And then, were you able to get any assistance?
Yes,
Yeah.
but it was a struggle.
Yeah.
You still have to learn how to jump through all the hoops, and you
Yeah.
know, yeah.
And
And we're
then
still paying back loans.
I believe it. Yeah. And then when the business comes back, it's kind of a slow.
Yeah, we're still not 100%.
Yeah. That's what I hear. And live music in particular, bands are facing all kinds of excuse me, obstacles when they go back out on the road. The cost of everything has increased tremendously. So the resistance to book the kinds of tours that they were doing pre-pandemic, etc. The cost of staying in the city. I mean, obviously, they're relying on friends, but the whole thing really needs to be rethought. Do you have any thoughts or suggestions or ways that? Yeah.
I mean, I think housing is a key. It really is. I mean, how are all the interesting people that really help build the city and attract so much, how are they going to survive when they have to pay $3,000 a month, just to live in the city?
This is a conversation that we keep coming back to again and again. So it's housing first, housing first, housing first. That's what we really want to emphasize. And before we depart the bar spaces, there are situations that come up where alcohol is served, and you need to contend with them. And so I just want to know what the protocol is, either for regulars or people who just might, find themselves in the wrong place at the wrong time at the wrong bar, and you have to deal with it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's just part of doing business. The staff is well trained, the door is well trained, I'm well trained. We try and nip things in the bud before they become a problem, whether that means not letting someone in or cutting someone off, or just, it's just being aware at all times. You just have to be. It's part of the job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It brings me back to when we were talking about, you didn't feel like it was a good idea for you to be at Esta Noche at certain times, right? And maybe, or how did you say it?
Mostly I was just probably too drunk and should have gone home.
Right, should have gone home.
Yeah.
Well, there's folks find themselves in that situation, and it's like, you know what? Maybe you need to go home, right? That's a good answer. But I think it's like, just as you would feel uncomfortable in spaces where people are kind of looking, like, I'm wondering if your customers sometimes will someone will come in and they'll feel uncomfortable. They're the patrons of your establishment, and someone feels unsafe to them that is causing a ruckus in their space. Is that a thing that comes up?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
Yes. At Mother, we are on 16th and Valencia. We have a lot of people, say, bar hopping, and they hear the music, they want to come in, and, it's the door guy's job to sort of assess the situation. But we've definitely had to ask people to leave because they're making our patrons uncomfortable. Absolutely. Right. We hope that we can avoid the situation at the door.
Good point. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I just thinking about it, And it's always a danger for me thinking out loud when we're doing a live broadcast. But it does remind me of, I I never felt comfortable back in the day when I was younger and I might have been out on 16th Street late at night, whatever. I knew that Esta Noche was not the place for me because not that I just didn't feel entitled. Like, I'm just going to walk into a bar where a lot of the people are speaking Spanish, people are enjoying themselves. They don't really need me to like enjoy. Like, I had a presence of mind. Even if I was out of my mind, I would have, gone elsewhere.
Right.
And yet I know people, but there was a time also when gay bars were very popular for all comers. And that's where the dancing and the fun was. I mean, we know that. Let's face it. I mean, Jonathan Richman has a song, Dancing at the Lesbian Bar, right? And it's like, well, but how do we feel when, like, straight people come in and they just want to occupy the lesbian bar?
Right. It's very hard to protect the space. And I think there's a certain demographic that has a hard time understanding that this is a space that needs to be protected. And not in a like you're going to do bad, but just, I try and explain to some people who come up to the door that as a, cishet white male, he has access to all the bars. And we have none. We have this one. And so when he comes in, he takes away the one space that we are trying to create. And, no matter what his intention is, just by being there, it changes the space. And there are so many other alternatives, especially on 16th and Valencia, and some people understand that, and some people just cannot wrap their head around that. And it's not that we don't want you in, it's just that we want our space. We want our space. We don't have that. And I talked about the hypervigilance. It's like, and I have, one of my staff members talked about how she's very feminine, way more than me. She's not hard. But she talked about how sometimes she just wants to get dressed up in the clothes that she wants to wear and not have to worry about getting looks, getting undressed with their eyes, getting, having men stare, the unwanted energy, and that's very real for all women. All women understand that, whether you're straight or gay. And can't we just have that space where we don't have to be so vigilant? Again, it comes back to that vigilance. Yeah.
Yeah. And perhaps that's where the Muay Thai comes in.
No,
I don't mean it that way. I just mean, was there a time in your life that you felt like, okay, I need to protect myself, get strong,
Yes.
and so I'm going to get into
bartending at Pops.
I'll bet. Yeah.
Yeah.
What years were you? at Pops?
2003 to 13, the glory days.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So tell me about, when you felt like it was time to
I
get
don't know. Pops was Pops was so much fun. Yeah. Nonstop fun, but a little chaotic.
Yeah.
And I was breaking up more fights than I ever imagined. And, and then I went through a breakup and I was like, well, maybe I should like learn how to protect myself. And I fell into Muay Thai.
Wow. Well, you more than fell into it. I mean, you have the gym, or the space. You can correct me on the proper terminology.
Gym.
Yeah. But for those who don't know, just give us the brief on the discipline.
So Muay Thai is a martial arts from Thailand, and we fight with our fists, our elbows, our knees, and kicks, legs. Yeah, it's a great sport.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it does sound appropriate for anyone who wants to get strong and learn some self-defense.
A little bit, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Are you a competitor?
I did. I'm retired now.
Wow.
Yeah. Nothing
Yeah.
major, and
Yeah.
it's just sort of moderately okay at it.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so tell me who now the gym is located in South Market?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And who frequents that establishment?
All kinds of people.
Are you
It's
one
a
of
beautiful
few
cross section.
of the Muay Thai gyms in the area?
There are a few in the city.
Okay.
Yes. I like mine. But no, I mean the diversity of people that walk through that door, it's I mean I appreciate it. I love it. Yeah.
Wow. So
Yeah.
people who live in the area or the citywide and or
And or people
Right.
who maybe work in the city. Yeah.
it's like an after work thing.
Sometimes, yes, those are our busiest classes, but we have classes throughout the day and on the
Are
weekends.
you an instructor?
I am. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
See, you seem like my ignorance in like the sports and martial arts area. So sorry that I didn't do
worries.
enough research there. But
Yeah, I
it's-
co-own it with my coach. He was my coach for so many years, and he's a champion from Thailand, and he's excellent. And at some point he was like, I really want to open my own gym, and can you help me? And how can you not? I mean, he's just I want him to flourish, and I want him to get the accolades that he deserves, and to have a space that he deserves.
Right.
Yeah.
So he's like a Muay Thai master.
Absolutely.
Got it.
Champion.
And what is his name?
Jongsanon.
Okay. So we'll look him up.
Yeah,
and,
look that up.
Yeah, get straight on
Absolutely.
that. Oh, good. We have
Jongsanon
plenty of time here.
Fairtex. Go look at some of his old fights.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. And so, and this is kind of like I don't want to say trendy, but it's a newer sport for American audiences, right?
Yes, I mean, Jongsanon came over in the 90s. There was this. That's when there was like this big boom in San Francisco specifically. A very big gym in Thailand opened up a branch out in San Francisco, and so that sort of grew the sport in California. And now you see there's people that started at Fairtex in the 90s are now have gyms all over the country. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So we have now the bars, the gym, and the theme that I have picked up on really is that like you want to create these spaces that are helpful to building community and supporting others who may need a hand or assistance or partner, a co-creator for their dream, right? Was it always your dream to have these establishments, and what made you kind of adaptable or drawn to hospitality?
I think that I'm sort of picking this apart even now. I have no idea how I ended up here, but I was talking to my girlfriend the other day and I was like, I definitely am going to have to get a real job sooner or later. I feel so lucky to just have walked this path. And I don't even know, I think I was so unaware of what I was doing, except I wanted to do it. And I've had other jobs that have been jobs or businesses that have been sort of more behind the scenes, more production or, manufacturing oriented, and they never really felt right. And I realized because of the pandemic about how I'm actually sort of driven to these communities and these spaces. And I've really enjoyed the ability to sort of craft a community that I enjoy and that I can pass on and that I can support and I can bring in and, have flourish.
Yeah. Was there anything in your family background that indicated you would have several businesses? And
I don't know. My great-grandparents owned a candy store. My grandfather was an entrepreneur, and he was a just gregarious man. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Were your great grandparents here in San
Hawaii.
Francisco?
In Hawaii.
In Hawaii.
Yeah, it was in Maui. A little candy shop
Interesting.
in Maui.
My great grandparents had a candy shop.
Yeah. Love that.
That would have been in the early 20th century, right?
Yeah.
That the great grandparents would have been having the candy. Candy. That would be a good show. I love. How where do you stand on candy?
I'm definitely more chocolate than sweet than hard candy. Yeah.
That's really interesting, though. So you could say, well, it's a little bit in your blood. You don't really know, but
I don't know.
So Hawaii. So this is your birthplace, your home.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh wow. And you got to San Francisco.
I went to college in Arizona for a year, and I visited a friend out here for whatever it was, some weekend or spring break, and they took me to a club called Code Blue, I think. It was in a giant warehouse, and I walked in, and I was like, oh, like, what is going on? This is a warehouse full of women. And I went back and put in my transfer and applied at San Francisco State and came back here the next semester. And I haven't left since.
Wow.
Yeah.
And just the contrast of obviously you were looking for something different than the laid back pace of the islands. Yeah.
Hawaii is Hawaii. It's great, but it's home.
Yeah.
And sometimes you need to get away.
Yeah. What island would you get?
Oahu. Yeah.
Yeah. And do you get to go back?
I do. I am fortunate enough. Yes.
And you have family?
All the family. Yeah. So I go back. I try and go back 2 or 3 times a year.
Great. And you did mention that you are a mom, so you have a kid.
I have a kid. I have a 10-year-old.
And does the 10-year-old enjoy some Hawaiian culture or have...
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it's vacation times 10. It's go to the beach, get shave ice, eat really good food, go back to the beach. It's great.
Surfing?
Not yet. They're getting there. They're
Surfing?
getting there. Not so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's one of Hawaii's gifts to
Absolutely.
the world.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's a great place to grow up.
Wow. Well, that's another bit of information that we didn't have about Malia Spanyol. So that's another thread. But it's interesting because Hawaii is such a warm and welcoming place that is geared to the tourist and the traveler. So you might say that your hospitality, is rooted in the aloha spirit.
It might, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then it was just encouraged. As soon as I got here, I got a job working in a restaurant, and I worked in that restaurant for years.
Yeah.
And that really, I learned a lot about hospitality.
Yeah. Well, you also mentioned production. And from what I understand about restaurant business, every night, right, is a production.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about La Lucha and coffee.
Coffee.
Which we love coffee.
The neighborhood started to change at the Parkside. And we were having a lot more business come in. Before it was very industrial. The base of sort of Potrero was very industrial, and it changed. And we need to sort of adapt and survive. And so we built this tiny little corner, just really good coffee, sight glass beans, just epically well done. And as a way to sort of just help us survive and help us keep thriving, another pivot that any business in San Francisco has to do, to survive in San Francisco, there's always a constant pivot. So we opened up this little coffee place, and it was great. And during the pandemic, I was, I guess, restless and, a little bit lost and not sure. The gym was shut down, and Parkside was half speed. And I have a dear friend of mine who lives 2 blocks from the new location on Sanchez and 30th go, hey, there's this empty storefront. you should put a coffee place in there because I really want to be able to walk to have good coffee. And so I looked into it, and then a month later, I had the storefront. And so here we go.
Wow. Yeah. And in Sanchez and 30th, yes, I can picture it. But
29th, sorry. 29th.
oh, and what was do you know who the previous occupants were?
It used to be a market called Bom Dia, and then it was a sort of a beautiful little cafe. I
Right,
can't
right.
think of the name right now.
Yeah. But it was a coffee desert. Put it that way.
Yes. Yes.
For people in the
I
neighborhood.
mean, Noise is
in
right
the
down,
pandemic.
is down the block, but still, it's
Right.
still 5, 6, 7 blocks away.
Yeah. And we are a city of cafes and coffee. Can't have enough of them, really.
Yeah.
So how do you find that neighborhood in terms of your base clientele?
It's very different. It's very different. You know, it's great. It's sunny. There we have such amazing regulars, all the dogs. And again, it's creating the space, this community. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And what about the menu? And are you making things on site?
I have an awesome staff there, and I have the best manager, and I would not be able to survive without Hilda. And the menu is fairly simple. It's all coffees and pastries. We have a few like specialty items, a rotating sort of seasonal menu that changes, but for the most part, it's just good, simple coffee.
That's great. I was going to ask you something about the cafe. Well, what is your day and your nights? What are they like in terms of like making the rounds, checking the locations?
I make the rounds.
Yeah.
And I basically just run errands. I go in and I check on everybody, fix things, go to the bank, work out,
right,
teach a class,
right,
eat some tater tots,
Do people be like, oh, the boss is here?
Probably, but I hope not.
Yeah.
I don't want to be that kind of a boss.
Do you ever get to hang out and enjoy?
I think that's what I do all day.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
I mean, sure, it's frustrating, and
right.
I'm, sometimes I'm putting out way more fires than I ever want to, but I don't want to be doing something I don't want to do.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be something that makes me absolutely miserable.
Right. Therefore, your idea that you have to get a real job someday. Yeah, I get
One
that.
of these days. Yeah.
Yeah. Can we talk a little bit about doing business in city of San Francisco, opportunities for women, queer folks, friendly civic engagement, or not so much? Do you confront some of those things, like you said, that you always feel like a little bit defended, people giving you side eye or whatever?
I mean, San Francisco is a great place, but I mean, no matter where you are, you have to jump through the hoops. As a small business owner, there are lots of hoops to jump through, and you have to have the skills or find someone with the skills to do that. And, there's paperwork and organization and, permits and insurance and sales tax and tax returns and payroll tax. And so it's a lot.
Well, we hear so much about how in San Francisco it is particularly a lot.
It's a lot.
Yeah. But it's not unnavigable in your experience.
Right. It is doable.
Yeah.
But it is a lot. And I can't speak for any other city, so I don't necessarily know, but I know this, and it is a lot.
Yeah.
And, but I wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah. A great place to do business.
There are opportunities. You just have to find them. Funding is available. You have to find it. You have to dig. You have to search. You have to be able to jump through the hoops like anything. You have to be able to answer all the questions, have the good credit, have the business plan, be able to get all your, ducks in a row. Like anything. You just have to.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the opportunities are there.
So you would encourage a young queer person to come here and make a life still, or try to start a business or something, even in the face of what we hear in terms of the changes and sometimes hostility that.
I mean, if you're queer, especially if you're outwardly queer, you're going to get hostilities no matter where you go and what you do. Even if you're not queer, even if you're a woman, you're still going to have barriers. You're still going to have challenges. You're still going to have, you know, lots of challenges simply because you're a woman. But I wouldn't have it any other way. I don't want, this is what I want to do. And so I'm going to find a way to do it, regardless of what anyone else says or tries to tell me, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Asking that question of anybody, how do you find San Francisco these days? I'd like, well, it's a great place to live in my estimation, but I have a lot of privilege, and I acknowledge that. I don't know if it would be the easiest place to be a young person trying to make a living wage and survive.
Right now, yes. Yeah, it is incredibly challenging. And again, I think that goes back to housing.
Yeah, there's that. And there's kind of a tradition of people, making their way, hustling, the 2 jobs isn't uncommon. 3 is kind of
3 even.
normal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that was even true when I was a young person.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah, I think the same was for my generation as well.
Yeah,
Like you find a way to do it.
Yeah.
You figure it out.
Yeah.
You hustle.
Yeah, it's just an interesting question because a lot of cities have been through this before. San Francisco's going through its downturn, and it did also in the 70s after, everything went on. And a lot of urban centers went through changes in the 70s. It feels similar to that at this moment, and that San Francisco has a chance to take things in a new direction. And I don't mean more development and more, opportunities for the wealthy, but perhaps more spaces and creative moments for artists to envision kind of a new city.
That would be great. But everything ebbs and flows.
Yeah.
Everything does. And so, I'm just going to keep holding it down.
Yeah.
And, I think it's important that to support my small, sort of dirt baggy, rough around the edges sort of crew and try and figure this out and keep it, sustainable.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because when you are in such close contact with the public and your communities day in, day out, you hear murmurings of these things. So what are you hearing from your people on the street and in your communities about what their hopes are for the city, or what are they feeling the temperature is like?
Everyone, right now, everyone is, talking about whether things are going to change. And, but mostly I think people were just trying to survive. I think we're just trying to survive. And, I think it's a matter of appreciating what we have and just seeing what happens.
Yeah.
And holding on to what little we do have.
Yeah, I wonder sometimes also about safety. I mean, literally, safety as an issue for all people who are under attack. There are so many groups of people who are specifically under attack, and in your community, it's heightened right
Absolutely.
now. And women in general at risk, trans people at risk, people of color at risk, people of different faiths what? When does it stop, and what are we doing to help?
Right, which is why which is another reason why I felt like it was very important, and time to create Mother, to have that space. Sort of a, circling of the wagons, because things are getting a little bit weird out there. And then we definitely need a space where we can not worry so much. So.
And when events happen on an international, national, or local scale, people need to have that place to come together, to have the collective experience of grieving or just being together. It goes a long way toward healing.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's I think that a lot of maybe customers are I didn't even realize, the spaces that I had and what they were offering to me. I was so unaware of it at that age. But so it could be a very subtle thing, having this space, but it is extremely important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of a quiet, just, we're doing this, but we're doing it for ourselves. And it starts at home, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's like, it's great that we are talking on Mother's Day about mother and like the very nurturing aspect that business and others can offer a city, not just your specific demographic, but it makes the city a better place for everyone, which we always like to emphasize that here, is that we're not just interested in identity, politics, and niche community concerns, but that this is San Francisco and we are supposed to care for each other.
Absolutely.
And so we really appreciate the work you're doing. I just want to ask you before you go on Mother's Day, I mean, you are raising a child here. And what do you tell them when times get dark or tough, or how do you find joy, just on a given day in challenging times?
Well, I don't know if these are challenging times. I mean, yes, every time is challenging times. And yes, but it's like you find the moments, the little moments every day, the small things. And I don't ever want to be dishonest with my child. And I want them to experience everything and see everything. And sometimes we have to have hard conversations about the world. But they get to grow up in an environment that is so diverse and creative, and they get to experience all these things that I didn't get to experience growing up. And they're so lucky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are some of your favorite things to do as a family, or just to show a young person around here?
I mean, we can just walk down 24th and Mission and have a great time. They get to hang out at the Parkside and watch bands play and pet all the dogs and just experience life. So many different neighborhoods and pockets, and how many ice cream parlors can we visit in a day?
Right.
And there's so much the city has to offer.
Yeah. And ice cream could be next for you.
Yeah.
Right. What do you think about, you have 4 businesses. Is that...
It's a lot.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, you think that
that's enough?
You're going to hold? Yeah.
Maybe. Probably. That's more than... I won't get any more. But I love all of them.
Yeah.
I think it's important to have really good staff. Really good crew who help support and can, and they save my life. They really make things so easy for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, they make me look good. But there's a very big base behind me. Yeah.
Well, we want to invite folks to remember La Lucha, 29th and Sanchez. Wooden Man, which is the Muay Thai
Gym on Harrison and 6th.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I need to get my martial arts on. And then the backside, which is back in action with live music several nights a week. And Mother.
Mother.
Yeah, a very happy place this Mother's Day. And every night of the week?
Every night of the week. Every day. 7 days a week.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, happy Mother's Day.
Thank you.
Malia Spanyol, thanks for
this.
coming by today.
Absolutely. This place is great.
It is great. It's a San
dying
Francisco
breed.
institution.
This is beautiful. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we're here every second Sunday of the month. Next month, our guest will be Casey Rios, and she's advocating for fair wages for all, but particularly musicians. She's a public gardener. She contributes a lot to the city, as do you, Malia Spanyol. Thank you again. Happy Mother's Day, and happy Mother's Day to all the mothers, the stepmothers, the parents, the people who nurture and care for each other and our city. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.